Hello everyone, and welcome to my personal ranking for Dark Souls bosses from easiest to hardest. This ranking doesn't take New Game Plus into account and might be a little different than you would expect. The bosses in this list are directly ranked based entirely on my performance during my first blind playthrough of the game, which was streamed on Twitch. What I mean by ranked on my performance is specifically death count. Bosses that I have a lower death count on will always be ranked easier than bosses I have a higher death count on. For example, if I died once on Sif and 10 times on Asylum Demon, then I'll have Asylum Demon ranked harder than Sif. These aren't the actual numbers, by the way, just an example I'm giving. The reason why I'm doing this is that it takes into account additional factors. Of course, if I took a brand new player and pitted them against Asylum Demon and Sif, they'll likely always have a harder time on Sif. But by ranking everything in this way, it takes into account how you gradually get better at the game and how much of an impact your gear and stats have. If I died the same amount of time on bosses though, then I will put them in whatever order I feel fits. So if I died once on both Asylum Demon and Sif, you can bet I'll put Sif above Asylum Demon. That being said though, this is the only real input I am putting into the list. Of course, things like being over-leveled or under-leveled might skew the results, but I think that's the most authentic way to rank things as, like I said, this is my first blind playthrough of the game. One final thing before we get started is that I did use summons for a few of the bosses, but the only one I actually beat with a summon is Centipede Demon. I don't think this should affect anything to do with its ranking, but do with that information what you will. In any case, let's get started. Number 26, Iron Golem. The easiest boss in Dark Souls is the Iron Golem. I'd love to regale you with how the Iron Golem fights or what he even does, but honestly I don't know too much. He shoots a supersonic blast at me in the beginning of the fight, does a few slow attacks, and after that I pretty much put him out of commission. He got really staggered when I hit him with my Zweihander, and he only recovered long enough to do a stomp which managed to chip me, and then he died. For what it's worth, he looks cool, but for being effectively the gatekeeper at Anor Londo, this dude is an absolute joke. Number 25, Pinwheel. Much to absolutely no one's surprise. The fall into this boss's arena did as much damage to me as Iron Golem, and that's a little sad. Pinwheel has his whole big intro cinematic like he's gonna be a threat, but then I just clobber him doing about 1/4 of his health bar per attack. To be fair though, I think I came here a bit late, so my gear and stats are probably way better than they should be. Nevertheless, I at least get what Pinwheel is trying to do. He creates duplicates of himself, and while you charge him, he and his goons shoot a bunch of magic at you. I'd imagine if you don't have absurd damage, then maybe this fight might be a real threat, but unfortunately for him, I do have absurd damage. This is not a perfect world, Pinwheel. Number 24, Dark Sun Gwendolyn. Now, I don't know much about Dark Souls lore, but I feel like this should have been at least a little harder than it was, given namesake alone. Dark Sun Gwendolyn creates a Mario 64-esque endless hallway and sits at the far end either shooting arrows or casting spells at you. Luckily, both of these can be avoided by hiding behind small pillars and running in a big dumb zigzag line towards them. When you reach Gwendolyn, he'll panic and start teleporting away, but you can beat the hell out of him in the meantime. For me, I only had to do this twice, but honestly, I don't see this fight getting any harder if I had to do it 3 or, God forbid, 4 times. No, he's just a sad little archer mage cowering before the might of me, a Chad-cursed greatsword of Artorias user. Number 23, Crossbreed Priscilla. Crossbreed Priscilla is a fight you don't have to do, but we murder hoboing out here, so you know I gotta kill her, man. Once you attack her unprovoked, she understandably goes invisible, trying to gain the upper hand. I won't lie, this actually stumped me for a while. Initially, I thought she was just gone, until she pulverized me while my guard was down. But once I opened my eyes and saw her footprints in the snow, the ruse was up. While visible, she is infinitely less intimidating, and you could just walk up and first-degree murder her. We're in a painted world after all, so who's gonna arrest you? Picasso? Just give her a couple of whacks and she'll go down real easy. Number 22, Gaping Dragon. Much to its credit, Gaping Dragon is one of the longer fights I had, which is really unfortunate because I do not like looking at him. He's capable of doing some decent damage, though I never actually got hit by his huge, slow, massively telegraphed attacks, which made it so he didn't actually have much kill potential. That is, unless I were to run out of Estus, which I didn't, not by a long shot. As far as strategy goes, if you haven't been tilted off the face of the earth by your time in the sewers to Blighttown path, you should be fine in this fight. If you play hyper aggressively, then this fight might be hard, but I played pretty safe and barely ever got hit. Definitely the most intimidating of the bosses thus far, but the bark doesn't match the bite. Number 21, Centipede Demon. This is a weird fight. You're basically confined to this small piece of land amidst a sea of lava with a boss that stands directly above you most of the time. Yeah, I had Seifyre helping me on this fight, but through the 3 frames I was getting, it looked to me like what he was doing was just standing and tanking the lava. Unlike the other bosses on this list, Centipede Demon could actually consistently hit me. It's just a shame that, for the most part, he doesn't really do all that much damage. I could sit there chugging Estus flasks all day while taking whacks at whatever part of his body happened to be the closest. Do this long enough and he'll be taking a nice lava nap. Along with Seifyre if he keeps standing there. Number 20, Demon Fire Sage. Demon Fire Sage is an interesting one. This probably comes off as a little weird considering I've already fought his 2 other counterparts by this point in the game, but as I said in the intro of this video, things like experience are taken into account when I get to these fights. He manages to be this low because I've dealt with other forms of him. Now I have the gear, stats, and knowledge on my side, and Fire Sage ain't really much to write home about. I think he has more, or at least different moves than his cousin the Stray Demon, but at this point in the game, I'm so ballin' that most of his explosions are very much tankable. He makes up for this though with a real chunky health pool. I found out the best way to get damage on him is to stay behind him, though that isn't always possible. I tried iframing through some explosions, and even when I didn't horribly mistime it, it seemed like it wasn't doable, so the best way to get around that is just by getting as much distance as possible away from them, which is also good advice for dealing with explosions in real life. Go figure. So as long as you can dodge his big weapon wind-up attacks, you aren't in danger of being one-shot, so just rush him down and move on with your life. Number 19, Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. It's strange putting this fight down this far, but I think it's the right call. Heck, listen to what I had to say right after I beat him. That was the last guy? Okay. I didn't think that was the final boss. I thought that was like a precursor to like what the next fight was gonna be. That wasn't like too terribly difficult. I kind of just kicked his ass. Gwyn really doesn't feel like final boss material, and he only took all of 2 minutes to beat. Keep in mind as well, all you parry lovers out there, I never actually learned to parry in Dark Souls 1. Well, more like all the Dark Souls games for that matter, and even then I didn't find him too terribly difficult. Are you gonna take damage? Absolutely, 100% you are going to be hit if you don't know how to parry. Heck, there are even plenty of times he could have potentially killed me if I played dumb. However, if you manage your stamina, and by that I mean use the Grass Crest shield, for God's sake, it's so good. And be careful when you heal or have enough poise to ignore his hits like I did, then you're gonna walk away hurt, but very much alive with tons of Estus to spare. Number 18, Grave Lord Nito. I apologize in advance for the quality of the footage you're about to see. My internet was having as much of a heart attack as I was during this fight. I was really gimped before this fight, having only 4 Estus by the time I got here after going through all the garbage of the extremely dark Tomb of Horrors, but I also lost half my HP as I got to the arena because you have to fall down a hole to get here. Iron Golem gets trumped again. Grave Lord Nito. Whew, that's real Nito! This was less of a boss fight and more of a panic attack. I realized very quickly, while being impaled by a ground spike, that the key to this fight is to always keep moving. You have small scaly boys and large scaly boys that will keep coming back so long as Nito is alive. The trick is to lead them away from Nito, then run over to him and get as many hits in as you can before his undead army comes back to help him. If it wasn't for the fact that I had to use one of my 2 humanities to keep me alive, I don't think I would have first tried this dude. However, if I'd actually managed to get here with full Estus, the fight would have been nearly as intense. Remember, I only used the equivalent of 5 Estus flasks here, and if I can do that, so can you. Number 17, Black Dragon Calamite. I bet you didn't expect to see this here, but to be fair to him, I think he did manage to kill me before I had my giant friend shoot him out of the sky, but I don't count that because we weren't really in the proper boss fight yet, you know? Regardless of that, this dragon can be an absolute nightmare to fight in the wrong conditions. I was at my absolute strongest when I fought him, and he still managed to work me like a child in a country without ethical labor laws. He has a pretty large variety of moves, including, but not limited to, fire, face stabbing, and a move that puts a status on me, and I wasn't quite sure what it did at the time. Oh, that's what that does. I don't actually know. Wait, that didn't actually do a lot of damage. What'd you do to me? Oh, there's a thing above me. Am I cursed? It was only later on that I'd learned that this particular status basically doubles all damage you take while it's on you. As you can probably imagine, that is not ideal. It was only through sheer luck and determination that I managed to skate through this fight as well as I did, because as someone who went through the game on New Game Plus of this fight at a later point, let's just say they are very different fights. But we're not judging New Game Plus, we're judging the first playthrough, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about the heaps of bodies over there. Look at me. Look at all the fun I'm having. Don't think about it. Number 16, Ceaseless Discharge. We're finally at one death, and Ceaseless Discharge is leading us off. I think if you fight this big boy the intended way, it could be difficult because when you come across him, this man is absolutely mad damage and managed to one-shot me before I even realized we were fighting. With the help of Twitch chat though, I learned of the secret forbidden way to fight him, which just so happens to be a lot easier when you come back to the fight after dying. You see, all you have to do is lead him to the fog gate at the start of what I guess can be called an arena, and he'll try to jump at you, leaving his juicy arm just sitting there on the platform. Give it a few whacks, it doesn't really matter what kind of damage you're doing at this point, and he'll fall off and instantly die. If done correctly, it's not hard to do this without taking any damage, and because equipment plays no real part in this fight, you could even do it naked with your bare fists if you so please to, and it would be just as effective as walking in here with god tier gear. For that reason, I think Ceaseless Discharge is definitely the least threatening of the bosses that managed to actually kill me. Number 15, Asylum Demon. The classic first boss of the game. He only managed to get a kill on me because after going through the fog gate, I didn't really know what was happening. It was only when I looked down and saw this absolute unit looking back up at me did I realize that this was my first real boss fight. Truth be told, given how chunky this man was, I didn't think he could reach me. Unfortunately, I failed to see he was wearing Jordans because he hopped up and dunked on me before I could do anything about it. When I came back, I missed the plunging attack on him like an absolute boss and just fought him normally. See, unlike our friend the Ceaseless Discharge, you have to actually do things to win this fight. It's not terribly hard because regardless of how good his jumps are, he's incapable of doing, well, anything quickly. Every attack has so big of a windup that you can file your taxes in between pressing the dodge button. That being said though, this boss fight accomplishes what it should. You learn when to attack, when not to attack, and how to dodge roll. It helps give you an idea of how to tackle the harder bosses later on, and for that I will always give the Asylum Demon credit. Also, he dummy thick, but that's neither here nor there. Number 14, Chaos Witch Quelaag. Chaos Witch Quelaag, if that is how you pronounce it, proves how horny people are because even people with arachnophobia completely forget about the spider portion of this mostly spider woman as soon as they see, to put it in Dark Souls terms, a great chest. This certainly isn't the hardest fight, but it's definitely up there as one of my favorites. If you make a point to dodge roll through all of her attacks, it's great training and a lot of fun. You do have to watch out for her lava though, as it'll linger on the ground for a while after she barfs it up. Spatial awareness and spacing is important so you don't get burned to an absolute crisp. She had one move that caught me off guard, and it was the reason she actually managed to kill me. Alright. Oh, is she tired? Okay, so when she falls over like that, she explodes. Okay. So long as you avoid that though and don't join the Quelaag simp army, she shouldn't prove to be too much trouble. Number 13, Sanctuary Guardian. We're finally venturing into DLC territory. Now I don't know exactly when you're meant to do the DLC, but I did it before venturing into the final area towards Gwyn. So at this point in the game, I'm pretty strong. I do tons of damage to the Sanctuary Guardian, but he counters it with his own ruthless aggression. Really, I feel the best way to handle this fight is to kill him and kill him fast before he starts shooting a bunch of lightning at you and overwhelming you with a barrage of attacks. Other than that though, there isn't much to this guy. I imagine this is one of the faster fights in the game, regardless of whether you win or lose. In this world, it's either kill fast or be killed fast. Number 12, Manus, Father of the Abyss. Hope y'all are ready to get comboed like you're in a Street Fighter game, because boy, howdy, Manus is gonna give it to you. Manus's physical attacks don't do a lot of damage, but he makes up for that by hitting you. A lot. During the early portions of the fight, he never really relents on his attacks. There were plenty of times I had to heal through some of them, which luckily I could do thanks to my giant armor poise. The real scary part of this fight is during the second half, when he starts incorporating his shadow magic in there, because if you ain't careful or built against it, that stuff will absolutely one-shot you. I didn't know this the first time around, but apparently you can have small Sith help you on this fight as a summon if you rescue them from behind an illusory wall. While I did do this on my New Game Plus playthrough and it proved absolutely invaluable, the only help I had on this fight was having my ears blown out by Megalovania. Thanks, Twitch chat. Number 11, Moonlight Butterfly. Hey, don't look at me like that. I know this fight ends up being above things like Nito, Calamite, and Manus, but the Moonlight Butterfly actually wrecked me initially. In what I hesitate to call a boss fight, the Moonlight Butterfly likes to moonlight fly away from you and shoot a bunch of green magic at you. Hold out long enough and it'll land, and you can remind it why it's called a butterfly and not a butterland. Despite having a moveset so small that I can count it on one hand, it is a rather good moveset against a guy that has not a lot of Estus and isn't particularly good at dodge rolling yet. The Magic Light Mothfly doesn't have a lot of kill potential per se, but rather will hit you with so much that you'll deplete like all 5 of your Estus flasks. But once you understand the fight, the moves, and start not sucking at dodging, you'll wonder how the Shoot Light Greenfly ever killed you in the first place. Number 10, Capra Demon. In what eventually becomes so insignificant of a threat that it turns into a normal, non-boss enemy, the Capra Demon on his own isn't really too scary. However, throw him in a tiny arena with a couple of dogs that instantly gank you and you've got the makings of an absolutely obnoxious fight. And it certainly doesn't help that you have to run through Backstab Alley to even get to the fight. Truth be told, I was so tilted by the time I actually got there that it probably caused an extra death or two. Send the dogs to the kennel right away because you don't want to deal with them. Afterwards, you can fight the Capra Demon one-on-one. I've been told you can use the stairs to cheese him out, but I found that to be not necessary at all because most of his attacks are easily dodgeable. Just sit in his face, cha-cha real smooth, and hit him with the old razzle-dazzle. Number 9, Seth the Scaleless. No, I'm not counting the time where he kills you prior to the actual boss fight. Seth the Scaleless is the weirdest looking dragon that I've ever seen, but hey, he's achieved immortality, so who am I to judge? Unfortunately for him, the source of his immortality is an extremely fragile ice sculpture that looks like a college art project. Once you go over there and whack it a single time, then the real fight begins. Despite dying to him a couple of times, I'm not familiar with a lot of Seth's moves as I just run around him and he desperately spins in place trying to keep up. I know he has a tail move that absolutely destroyed me. He also has a move that tests if you have curse resistance, and if you fail the test, you die. Basically, my TLDR MLG get good guide to Seth is take curse resistance, slap the ice sculpture, run around him and hit him on the side or the back, and avoid his tail attack. Bonus points if you blow an air horn right after you kill him. Number 8, Ornstein and Smo. Well, I've really done it now. Now everything that comes after this fight that isn't God himself is going to be heavily scrutinized. Ornstein and Smo is a super cool fight and is definitely one of the more memorable in the Souls series. I understand why this boss is as infamous as it is, and in different conditions, I definitely may have had more trouble with it. Now, with all that out of the way, once I understood how this fight worked, I absolutely clapped these boys. Full disclaimer, at this point in the game, my character was entirely strength-oriented, but I started dipping into other stats because I wanted to wield the Greatsword of Artorias, but that had dummy prerequisites, so this was a transition period in my build. As such, I was using the Demon Great Axe, a somewhat rare drop, and a weapon that at least I consider to be the best strength weapon in the game. That, combined with giant armor, gave me great damage, big defense, and giant poise. I'd highly recommend killing Ornstein first because not only is he insanely squishy, but after killing one of these guys, the other one powers up, and Super Ornstein is vastly more dangerous than Super Smo. So if you can survive the first phase of the fight, Super Smo is honestly really not that tough. He might be super Smo, but he is also super slow and massively telegraphs every attack he's going to do. Sure, he might be tanky, but so long as you're avoiding hits, that doesn't really matter. Chip away at him till the big boy goes down and you'll be seeing a great chest in no time. Number 7, Taurus Demon. Now we're taking a sharp left and backtracking to the beginning of the game, back to our good old friend the Taurus Demon. Understandably, at the beginning of the game, I wasn't very good at Dark Souls, and I'd dare to wager neither were you. I was still getting a handle on how the game worked, how I wanted to fight, and how, for the love of God, to properly dodge roll. As such, Taurus Demon managed to smack me around quite a bit. There is a trick you can do to make him a more manageable fight, which is to use plunging attacks off the tower in the back. Hell, you can even abuse this mechanic to basically cheese the whole fight. I, on the other hand, didn't know about this tactic until a helpful friend in Twitch chat told me about it. But even then, I opted not to use it because I didn't want to cheese a boss fight out of principle. And boy am I glad I didn't, because I managed to catch a really cool moment. Dang it, okay. I'm actually getting it, oh, I'm still alive. Wait, what? How am I still alive? I shouldn't be. Got him. Got him. Got him, boys. You think I gotta cheese this man? I don't give a f. Did we just kill him? We can just kill him, boys. Number 6, Bell Gargoyles. We're still early in the game on this one, but by this point I traded any usable armor I could have to instead wield the Zweihander, a beast of an early game weapon. Dealing damage to the gargoyles was not a problem. Surviving long enough for it to matter was. It certainly didn't help that there were about 1 million enemies in between these guys and the last bonfire, a problem which will plague my psyche in both this game and Souls games to come. These gargoyles have some real long attack range, and if you don't manage to kill one once the second one arrives, you're gonna be in for a bad time. In addition to zoning you out with range, the second gargoyle, at least in my experience, loves using fire breath. It deals a lot of damage and has more range than you think it does. You can run around it and hit the gargoyle, but remember, I'm still a Dark Souls baby at this point, and due to targeting, I would accidentally dodge roll or attack into the fire more times than I'd care to admit. But by rushing down the first gargoyle and taking it slow on the second, victory can be achieved. Number 5, Stray Demon. This fight is dumb and super cheap, and I don't like it. To get to this fight, you fall down a hole that you don't know is there into a small arena with a big demon wielding a big weapon that can create explosions. Does that sound like complete garbage to you? Because it should. The first time around, I just died because I didn't know the floor would fall in. The second time, I took half my HP and damage from the fall, and before I could even recover, he hit me for the second half of my health. Almost as if the devs really wanted to make this recycled boss fight seem hard, they made it so the floor above the Stray Demon doesn't collapse in. No, that would mean I could get a plunging attack on him. Nah, instead, they're gonna make me fall directly in front of him every single time, with the fall alone doing more damage than Iron Golem could ever do to me. Once you finally fall far enough away from him and Estus immediately, then you can enjoy the fun of being blown up about 200 times. Fun fact, these explosions hit me for about half my health. Once you get past this learning point, then you realize all those things were in place because this guy is not a threat at all. The explosions are the only real moves he could consistently hit me with, and once you learn how to kinda deal with them, then he's dead. And good riddance too. I liked you better when you had hops and not nuclear warheads attached to your weapon. Number 4, Great Grey Wolf Sif. Sif is a really cool fight, but it makes you feel like a monster. Yo fam, let me invade your private property, pillage your grave, and kill your dog. Now I started trying to kill Sif probably earlier than I should have, because once someone told me about the fabled Great Sword of Artorias, a sword that scales with all stats, I knew I wanted to get it. Unfortunately for me, I had subpar stats with garbage armor and an unupgraded or slightly upgraded Zweihander. Basically, I didn't do enough damage and Sif did too much damage. Thankfully, I got to think about my life choices on the extremely long ladder climb back up to them because silly me didn't know about the shortcut. All I feel is pain. It wouldn't be until my next session of Dark Souls that I would tackle Sif again, this time with stone armor and an upgraded weapon. Using these absolutely necessary tools, I butchered the doggo. It just goes to show, make sure you bring your best gear when you go off grave robbing and have to fight a giant dog. I mean, what? Number 3, Four Kings. This boss is absolutely lying to you. With a name like that, you'd assume that you're fighting 4 kings, but instead, you're only fighting 4 kings at a time. That's right, if you kill 2 kings, 4 more can still spawn after that. That's why I say that this fight should be renamed to 4 Kings at a Time, a much more accurate name. Factually incorrect names aside, I really don't like this fight. Not only does it have the long walk to get back to the boss Dark Souls trademarked, but I'd argue that this fight isn't really about skill. This fight feels pretty directly like a stat check and a gear check boss. I hope you have good gear and high stats, otherwise this is gonna be a nightmare. The 4 kings spawn in on a timer, so it's in your best interest to kill 1 king before the next one spawns in. Otherwise, you're really gonna be hating life. Oh, is there another one behind me? Oh, this is good. No, this is fine. No, don't worry about it. No, this is, what the f is this fight? What the f is this fight? As a strength build with good poise, I found that just mindlessly rushing at the boss and tanking through hits is the way to go. There are still a few that are worth avoiding, but trust me, running out of Estus isn't what's gonna kill you in this fight. It's running out of time before all the kings show up to curb stomp you. Most of the king's sword attacks don't do too much damage, but he will occasionally create a massive ground explosion that you really don't need to be caught in. Or he'll shoot a spell at you that will follow you until the end of time. Truthfully, I don't know how to deal with this spell, and running away from it takes too much time, so I usually end up tanking it. The one move you should try to avoid is when he rushes you and cradles you in his arms while he sucks your life up. Though this move does decent damage, it's really bad because of how much time it takes for him to do it, and you're gonna need all the time you can get for this fight. My recommendation, if you're not a caster, is throwing on things that increase your stamina regen, like my beloved Grass Crest shield. And because you need a particular ring to get down here, you're limited to only 1 ring in this fight. Great! That's really the only advice I can offer up though. Upgrade your gear as much as humanly possible, buff up your primary damage stat, and rush these dudes down. With a little luck, you'll manage to beat them without getting an aneurysm. Number 2, Bed of Chaos. In what I hesitate to even call a boss fight, we have the Bed of Chaos. It's one of the more infamous bosses in Dark Souls, and for good reason. Similar to the Ceaseless Discharge, you can come in here with whatever equipment you want and kill this guy, because regardless of your weapon, he dies in 3 hits. Unlike Ceaseless Discharge though, where you can win with nearly anything, you can bring whatever you want to this fight, and he'll still just absolutely murder you. The goal of the fight is to hit the 2 bug things? I'm going with bug things. To hit the 2 bug things on its left and right side. Getting to the first one is easy, but after you kill it, that's where the real pain begins. He'll grow an additional arm, this one made of fire, and attack you with it. Surprisingly though, this is not the problem. In addition to gaining an extra limb, the room will begin to fall apart and massive holes will appear in the floor. Unless you know the route, you'll either be constantly falling into or getting knocked into these holes. And don't try to jump over them either. Dark Souls just simply does not work as a platformer, and even though it looks like you should be able to make the jump, you won't. Alright. The only saving grace of this overgrown tree is that, unlike every other boss in the game, your progress will be saved in this fight. So after you kill one side of it, that side will stay dead even after you die and come back. So through trial and error and sheer dumb luck, you will eventually kill both sides of this guy. After that, a path in the middle opens up and it's just a quick stroll to get in there and kill him in one shot. And before anyone says anything, I know that you can cheese this fight by throwing grenades at him or at whatever the right spots are, but A, I didn't know about that cheese, and B, even if I did, I didn't want to cheese through any fights. So if you did that, enjoy your tainted victory, you coward. Number 1, Knight Artorias. the boss that managed to kill me the most, besides the last one, and thus who I'm ranking the hardest in my blind playthrough of the game is Knight Artorias. Honestly, this feels fitting too because it is 100% my favorite fight in the game, even if I have to do a small marathon to get there every time. Artorias is a very straightforward and fair fight. He doesn't have a massive number of moves, but the difficulty comes from how he changed them together. It's all about trying to figure out what he's going to do next and if it's something you can punish. His most easily punishable move is when he runs away to charge up, so any ranged options you have, you should put to use here. It's also a great time to heal, as when he's attacking you, you won't have many opportunities to safely pop an Estus without having a whole ass sword in your chest. This has everything I want in a boss fight. It's a simple one-on-one, dude with a big sword versus dude with a big sword, the battle of two absolute chads, made even more appropriate since we're both using a great sword of Artorias. If you've never fought this man before, I highly suggest going to do that, and if you have, you'll probably agree with my sentiment that it is one of, if not the best fight in Dark Souls 1. Now all we need is to have a checkpoint right outside the boss's arena, but I'm sure that'll be remedied in Dark Souls 2, right? Right? In any case though, that's my ranking of all the Dark Souls bosses, based on how I did against them in my first ever blind playthrough of the game. I'm not sure how my performance compares to other people's first attempts, but I at least felt like I did pretty good. Plus, through all the annoyances of some bosses, right after I finished this game on stream, I went through it all again on New Game Plus for the next 3 streams or so clearly, it didn't detract too much from my experience. All of this is just a precursor though. An appetizer before I get completely and utterly smacked around in Dark Souls 2, though I haven't actually gone through those VODs yet, so it's hard to say if I died more against the bosses or just died more in the game in general, but that's a topic for another time. For right now, I'd like to say thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye-bye!